It seems to me there's so much more to the world than the average eye is allowed to see. I believe if you look hard, there are more wonders in this universe than you could have ever dreamed of. Vincent van Gogh, or Van Gogh. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. It is Tuesday, and you know what that means, and you know what we do here. We have been doing lots of series and all the things that I am interested in, namely Hermetic philosophy lately, also Dr. Wayne Dyer, and self-help, positive psychology, and spiritual philosophy. The Tao Te Ching in another series, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, Living the Wisdom of the Tao, and we did this entire book. And also lately, excuse me, or maybe a month or so ago, we started a series in the Mysteries of the Unexplained. I was just about to say the mysteries of the universe, because that's what we're always looking to discover, and also the wisdom of Dr. David R. Hawkins' classic teachings on spiritual truth and enlightenment. Now, we made it about halfway through that book. We will get back to that at some point, and if you'd like more of that on this channel, then let me know. I'd like to know what you're most interested in so we can focus on the things that you're most interested in. But I tend to do whatever. Whoa, kitten attack, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, we should be all good now. However, let us continue in our series of the mysteries of the unexplained, going into more prophecy. We talked about the plowboy prophet in our last episode of this series. Robert Nixon, a rural visionary who by reputation was held to be mentally challenged. However, he ended up being the one who predicted, who became the prophet for Henry Tudor, was crowned King Henry after the defeat and death of Richard III, as was seen by the clairvoyant plowboy from afar. And so, now we find ourselves at the prophecies of Nostradamus. Thank you for being here. Appreciate everybody joining me. And let's dive right into it. The most famous of all non-biblical prophets, Michel de Nostradam, or Nostradamus, was born at Saint Remy, and if I mess up any of the pronunciations, I apologize. Once again, this is just for fun and expanding the mind. So hopefully through that increased awareness and understanding, we can increase the quality of our lives. Entertainment and education. Edutainment purposes, ladies and gentlemen. Now, was born at Saint Remy in the south of France in 1503. He became famous for his medical work with victims of the plague that broke out at Aix-en-Provence and Lyons in 1546 and 47, which is a very interesting story in its own right, however, and only after this began making prophecies. His first collection was published as an almanac of weather predictions in 1550, and in 1555 he published the first 10 collections of prophecies, almost 1,000 in all, under the title of Centuries. He died at Ceylon in southern France in 1566. So he literally only lived about 63 years, ladies and gentlemen. Nostradamus wrote his prophecies in verse, for the most part in a highly symbolic style. This, and the fact that he chose not to arrange them in any particular order, makes their interpretation, in many cases, a matter of conjecture. And this is what we've been discussing about synchronicity and prophecies and the oracles. and even the clairvoyant plowboy, is that a lot of this realm of the mysterious and the mystical and going beyond the walls of time and seeing the future and the past seems to be an area of study or a subject that is always open to a lot of conjecture or debate, which makes it fun, which makes it mysterious, but also interesting. And so let us continue. Interpretation, in many cases, a matter of conjecture. Nonetheless, a number of the prophecies do seem to point rather clearly to events that had not yet occurred when centuries appeared. The first prophecy to bring Nostradamus fame as a seer was the following, ladies and gentlemen. And it says, the young lion will overcome the older one in a field of combat in a single fight. He will pierce his eyes in their golden cage, 2 wounds in one. Then he dies a cruel death. Now, I would say that's extremely vague, and you could find 10,000 circumstances to fit that description. However, going back to King Henry, except many years later, 4 years later, in July 1559, King Henry II of France, who sometimes used the lion as his emblem, engaged in a jousting contest, and the lance of his young opponent had pierced the king's gilt helmet and wounded him. I think they're talking about the slit in the helmet there. Henry died after the prolonged agony. Few of Nostradamus's prophecies contain anything so precise as a date, or even a partial date, but he seems to have given one for the Great Fire of London. Ooh, back to the Great Fires, ladies and gentlemen, which is a subject in its own right. And hopefully we can dive into that one day, because there is a lot to learn, ladies and gentlemen, about the mysteries of our history and the secrets of our past, and looking into the old world and all the subjects that come along with that. And we will get into that one of these days, ladies and gentlemen. But just a shout out to John Levy and Evidence of the Old World. Now, let us continue. I just felt it important to point that out for those that are interested in the Great Fires. Great Fire of London in 1666, saying it would occur, quote, in 3 times 20 plus 6. Most of Nostradamus' prophecies concern a large-scale political movement and the affairs of the high and mighty. The French Revolution seems to be the subject of several verses, including this. Quote, from the enslaved populace, songs, chants, and demands, while princes and lords are held captive in prisons. These will in the future be received by headless idiots as divine prayers. And this is his description of the French Revolution. See, ladies and gentlemen, it's all open to conjecture, but it's fascinating to ponder on and contemplate, meditate upon. The first sentence is straightforward. The headless idiots of the second sentence are thought to refer to the early leaders of the revolution, who perceived the demands of the French populace as prayers, and who, ultimately corrupted by their new power, were themselves overthrown and guillotined. In a letter to King Henry II, Nostradamus also predicted 1792 as a key date in the affairs of state. In September of that year, at the culmination of the revolution, now remember, this is a prediction from Nostradamus, 1792, but he only lived to 1566. So he's going hundreds of years out here. At the culmination of the revolution, France was declared a republic. The deaths of Queen Marie Antoinette and Madame du Barry, a mistress of Louis XVI. Not sure. Not really great on my Roman numerals there. Maybe you could leave me a comment below, ladies and gentlemen. I'm guessing, though, that would be like the 16th, maybe. Also appear to have been forecast by this remarkable seer. So the deaths of Queen Antoinette and many more. Like most prophets, Nostradamus seems to have had a particular talent for predicting disasters and falls from power. He is held to have described the fate of Napoleon, whose rule over the French Empire ended with his imprisonment on the tiny island of St. Helena in 1815. Really? And to have predicted the abdication of King Edward of Great Britain in 1936. Now, this is a long time. We're talking hundreds of years later. I personally didn't know that Napoleon had, was so recent, 1815. That's like not that long ago, ladies and gentlemen. However, continuing in two quatrains, Nostradamus came close to naming the chancellor, naming the most infamous figure of World War II. I don't know if we can mention that. We'll just call him the chancellor. But it also described his calamitous activities with some accuracy. Possibly. According to the first one, says liberty shall not be recovered. A black, fierce, villainous, evil man shall occupy it. When the ties of his alliance are wrought, Venice shall be vexed by Hister, Hister, and a lot of people think that meant a different name. I don't know. Once again, it's all open to what you think. Let me know what you think in the comments below, ladies and gentlemen, but be careful with keywords around certain subjects. But those of us that know understand. The second quatrain was even more vivid. Beasts wild with hunger will cross the rivers. The greater part of the battlefield will be against Hister. He will drag the leader into a cage of iron. When the child of Germany observes no law. I'm thinking of the History Channel when they're doing these shows, and whenever the quatrain is read, it has this like crazy voice where it's like, you know. Once again, this is just for fun, ladies and gentlemen. That voice, though, that it always is like, beasts with wild hunger will cross the rivers. And it's all, they really try to add a lot of dramatization, ladies and gentlemen. I tell you what. Judged and condemned to death by a revolutionary tribunal and panel of jurors chosen by a lot, Queen Marie Antoinette of France was led to the guillotine in October 1793. Sheesh. I mean, we were so civilized, weren't we? I wonder if I can show you this picture here. Let's see if we can get that. But see, check that out. Oops, wrong way. Check that out. And can you see the architecture we have going on in the background there? I mean, you think these dudes that are guillotining people are going to be building cities and statues of marvelousness, of magnificence? But at the same time, oh, let's just go guillotine the idiots. I mean, it's like, I don't know if we can fix that zoom there, but I thought that would be interesting for you to get a little view. Now, in content, the verses are remarkably apt. liberty was seized or occupied by an evil, black-hearted, and black-haired man, although that is not what it said. That is not what it said. And so once again, conjecture. Whatever, and I'd really like to hear what you think, ladies and gentlemen, about Nostradamus and some of his prophecies, because we are going through the section entitled Beyond the Walls of Time, Prophecies. An endless search for answers, ladies and gentlemen. An endless search for answers. The present is our only point of reference for the past and for the future, and our awareness of any happening must obviously occur somewhat after the actual event. So what then are we to make of the time warp and the mystical that allows some people to prophesy and see that which will happen in the future? Anomalies and coincidences are related phenomena in that they are both departures from the expected time frame, that some prophecies do come true, that anomalies of many kinds exist, and that coincidences abound. All this is without question the as yet fathomless mystery is what force or forces are powerful enough to bring them into being. Very interesting, ladies and gentlemen. Very interesting. And real quick, before we finish up, let's look at Cyrano's amazing predictions. The French author, Cyrano de Bergerac, whom fate and Edmond Rostand's play have made immortal for the size of his nose and his superlative swordmanship. Superlative? Superlative? His amazing swordmanship, uncompared, should probably be remembered as a lively science fiction writer, a competent playwright, and an inquiring scholar. But also, perhaps, he could be remembered, ladies and gentlemen, as a prophet, a seer. His two romances on trips to the moon and the sun, which usually appear in a single volume under the English titles Voyages to the Moon and the Sun, were published posthumously after his death in 1656 and 1662, respectively. I don't like always looking down. I'd rather look like this, so I'm closer to looking at the camera. However, once again, just for fun and entertainment here today, taking it easy, ladies and gentlemen. Not trying to be too serious. Now, in them, only a few years later, after Galileo had recanted the fact before the Inquisition, Cyrano described the orbit of the Earth and other planets around the Sun and the weak gravitational field of the Moon. And he proposed, among several fanciful methods of interplanetary travel, a form of rocket propulsion. Now we're talking 1656 to 62, ladies and gentlemen. It's like something I heard yesterday listening to Magnetic Reversal News. And it's like we seem to have this concept of ourselves throughout history as being dumber and dumber, going back the further we go back into the past, and now we are the smartest we've ever been. But really, if you look into it, we haven't changed very much in 130,000 years or more. So the human beings that we are now are no greater, no more advanced than the human beings we were 100,000 years ago. The only difference is the tools that we have at our fingertips. And this idea that we were not at some point smarter than we are today is obviously becoming more and more obvious over time, an incorrect way to perceive reality. I mean, in 1656, these guys are talking about rocket propulsion. He also proposed 300 years before the idea was borrowed by the writer Erich von Daniken, which we're all very familiar with, Chariots of the Gods, that the gods and mythological beings with whom Earth's history is intertwined with were actually travelers from outer space. In this case, in his story, inhabitants of the moon, though originally from the sun. Very fascinating. Very fascinating. I like the more astro astro theological perspective or viewpoint on that. Seeing the gods as archetypes with certain traits and characteristics that influence, looking at astrology and those kind of things, ladies and gentlemen, rather than, oh, they're travelers from outer space. And like, there's three arguments here. It's either we were given, like, when you think about things like Göbekli Tepe, that's what they were talking about. Magnetic Reversal News, if you haven't checked it out, good channel. Now, but it's like we either had the knowledge and then lost it over time and have forgotten, or we were either given the knowledge by, a more advanced civilization, Atlantis, Lemuria, whatever, and it was passed down and pretty much now has been forgotten. So both of those arguments are similar ones. And then the third one is like, oh, we were given this knowledge and ability by aliens. It's extraterrestrials. It just can't be us because we're not that good. But I think that's the fallacy there, is that we really are that good, and we need to stop. We need to stop discrediting ourselves. Anyways, that's a different topic and a different ramble. And so Cyrano also, and he also mentioned that these entities that come from the sun, who live on the moon, which is very interesting. I mean, there's always been speculation of what's on the moon and why, once we learned what we learned, decided not to go back very much or tell anyone when we were. But could these inhabitants of the moon, Cyrano believed that they could also change their shape at will, shapeshifters. And also, far more remarkably, he described the following items of moon technology: houses that could be withdrawn into the ground on huge screws in cold weather. Though the retractable screw is something not yet attempted by builders of firm houses, the houses that moved about with the seasons, driven by sails filled by bellows, devices to record and play back speech, radiant bulbs that made the lunar night as bright as day. Wow. See, this guy, this is synchronicities. This guy was tapping into something, some kind of Akashic knowledge in the field. Although many science fiction writers have forecast new technology, none was so early in the field as Cyrano, with his prevision of such electrical and electronic inventions as the phonograph and tape recorder, mobile homes, and light bulbs. He may indeed have equals in the field, but we shall never have to wait another 200 or 300 years to find out. Comes to us from Sam Moskowitz, Explorers of the Infinite, pages 23 to 27. Very interesting, ladies and gentlemen, illustrating the prophetic works of Cyrano de Bergerac on space travel were these depictions of a spacecraft sailing to the sun and a man flying with the aid of a special belt. Very interesting, ladies and gentlemen. Sailing. See, they said he envisioned mobile homes, but to me, a mobile home, you literally just put it on a lot and leave it there until you want to move it to a new lot. But that's not what Cyrano was describing there. He was describing houses that moved about with the seasons, driven by sails, filled by bellows. Now, to me, that is describing airships, more commonly known as zeppelins, or blimps of a sort. But we're talking like an entire large home, a miniature mansion that flies through the air. I mean, can you imagine flying, but yet without the fear that we're sold about airplanes? Like, you can't have the window open, you'll be sucked out immediately. The pressure will destroy everybody. I'm like, so, yeah, maybe, but why don't we not go up to 30,000 feet or whatever? And why don't we just have a nice, beautiful, enjoying, relaxing flight to our destination and take a little longer? And I mean, you honestly wouldn't even have to. See, I'm getting on a totally different subject again. This is just what I do, ladies and gentlemen. Whatever pops into my mind, I'm like, wow, this is interesting. And this is why I'm here sharing this with you, because honestly, it's hard to find people in our lives that share our curiosities and our interests as much as we do. So often, we attempt to go these directions with those that we actually encounter and experience life with, and often it is met on, you know, quote unquote deaf ears. There's, anyways, anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that was some more progress in Mysteries of the Unexplained and the Prophecies of Nostradamus and Cyrano de Bergerac. I almost like Cyrano's better than Nostradamus. Seems to me Nostradamus was just trying to be vague and include a lot of stuff. This guy was like a science fiction writer. And so he was just being creative. And it's like, maybe this is possible. And now we're like, wow, can't believe he thought of this stuff before its time, or even some of the stuff that wouldn't even last. To the new world from the old world, ladies and gentlemen, airships. That's a cool subject. If you've never looked into that, check it out. Can't believe he described it there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I love and appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much for spending time with me and all the wonderful authors and poets and mystics and philosophers and sages of the ages. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, seek to achieve and maintain happiness through enlightenment, through greater awareness and understanding of the nature of reality and of ourselves, so that through that awareness we can increase the quality of our lives. And remember, there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. It is what we must bring to life. And when we can create that ability within ourselves to bring happiness to life, then all the things we've been telling ourselves, oh, when I get this much and I have that, then I'll finally be happy, that becomes irrelevant, because then we already are there. Hopefully, the entire journey is wonderful. All right. Love and appreciate you, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure to expand the description to get this book for yourself, to put it on your shelf, so you can follow along in the future. And also just to have for reference and to check it out when you need a little mysteries of the unexplained. All right. Until tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, be the change that you want to see. Be the example that you want to set. Thank you.